Story 1. The Forest of Secrets. The small town of Willow Creek, hidden deep in the dense forests of northern Maine, held a secret. Locals whispered about the woods, known as the Whispering Forest, claiming there was something unusual about them. But no one took it seriously. At least, not until the day 14-year-old Lisa Morrison vanished. Lisa was known for her adventurous spirit. She often wandered the forest but always made it back home before dark. This time, she didn't. Her backpack was found near a trail leading deeper into the woods. Inside was her journal, and the last entry read, "I know they're here. I heard their voices." Lisa's disappearance shocked the entire town, especially her best friends, 13-year-old Ethan, 12-year-old Sophie, and 11-year-old Noah. They couldn't just sit and wait for the adults to find Lisa. They had to act. Their first clue was Lisa's journal. Among the pages, they found cryptic notes that seemed to mark locations in the forest. Ethan, a puzzle enthusiast, deciphered the code. It pointed to 3 spots on an old forest map: the tree with the eye, the marked stone, and the underground entrance. Determined, the kids gathered their flashlights, pocket knives, and a camera before heading into the woods. Their first stop, the tree with the eye. After an hour of searching, they found it, a massive oak with a carved symbol resembling an eye. Beneath it, they discovered a torn piece of striped fabric, Lisa's sweater. Then Sophie noticed something strange. The tree had tiny scratches, as if someone had tried to carve something else. When they looked closer, they saw the message. She wasn't the first. The second location was the marked stone, a large boulder with a symbol, a triangle with a circle inside. Surrounding it were signs of recent digging. The kids hesitated but decided to check. Under a thin layer of dirt, they unearthed a rusted metal box. Inside were photographs of children who had disappeared over the past 50 years. Lisa's picture was among them. On the back of one photo was a chilling message. They belonged to the forest. Panic set in. This wasn't just a disappearance. Something, or someone, was taking kids. The third location was the underground entrance. They found it near an old fallen tree, hidden beneath thick bushes. Pulling back the branches, they uncovered a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. Ethan suggested they go in. Sophie hesitated. Then, they heard voices. Faint whispers. Coming from below, with their hearts pounding, they descended. The stone tunnel was lined with strange symbols, the same ones from the tree and the stone. At the end of the tunnel, they entered a cavern. And there, tied to the wall, was Lisa. She was alive. Beside her stood a man in a mask. He turned slowly toward them and spoke. "You shouldn't have come here." The man removed his mask. The kids froze. It was Mr. Harper, their history teacher. The one who always seemed kind and warm. But now, his face was cold, his eyes burning with something dark. In his hand was a knife. His voice was calm, yet threatening. "You weren't supposed to see this," he said, stepping closer. Lisa was chosen. And now, so are you. Ethan, always the leader, stepped in front of Sophie and Lisa. His hands trembled, but he held his ground. "Chosen for what?" he asked, trying to stall. Mr. Harper's lips curled into a chilling smile. "To be sold. There are people who pay well for smart, healthy kids. And you, my dear students, are perfect candidates. Sophie's body went cold. She couldn't believe it. Their teacher, the man who helped them with homework and joked in class, was a monster. Lisa sobbed, but Harper didn't even glance at her. Then, something unexpected happened. Noah, the quiet, shy one, stepped forward. His face was pale, but his eyes burned with a strange determination. "I knew you'd do this," he said, looking at Mr. Harper. Silence. Ethan turned to Noah, eyes wide. "What?" Noah took a deep breath. "I helped him." Sophie's stomach dropped. "My family is in debt," Noah continued, voice barely above a whisper. "He promised us money if I helped find new kids." Betrayal hit like a punch to the gut. Ethan's fists clenched, his face burning with anger. "You traitor," he shouted, lunging at Noah. But Mr. Harper moved faster. He shoved Ethan aside, sending him crashing to the ground. Sophie rushed to untie Lisa's ropes. Noah stood frozen, pain etched on his face, but he didn't try to explain. "Enough," Mr. Harper snapped, raising his knife. "None of you are leaving." Then, the cave trembled. The walls cracked. Thick roots slithered through the stone. Rocks began to fall. The forest was waking up. Mr. Harper's face twisted in panic. "We need to get out. Now." Ethan seized the moment. He tackled Harper, knocking the knife from his grip. They wrestled on the ground, grunting and struggling. Sophie freed Lisa, and together they bolted for the exit. Noah stood still, tears in his eyes. He looked at Ethan, then Harper. Then, in a sudden burst of movement, he shoved Harper back, giving Ethan a chance to escape. "Run!" Noah screamed. Ethan, Sophie, and Lisa sprinted toward the exit. But Noah stayed behind. Harper, furious, lunged at him. "You little..." Then, a massive rock fell from above, sealing the cave entrance. The children ran through the forest, hearts pounding, lungs burning. They didn't stop until they reached the edge of town. Lisa was reunited with her family. She never spoke about what happened in the forest. Mr. Harper's body was found in the collapsed cave. Noah was never seen again. The kids never returned to the Whispering Forest. But sometimes, late at night, they still heard the voices from their dreams. They knew the forest was still there, waiting. And one day, it would wake again. Story 2. Shadow in the Forest. The small town of Black River, Oregon, had always been quiet and peaceful. Nestled among dense forests, it lived at its own leisurely pace. But one morning, everything changed. 12-year-old Emily Carter went missing. Her bicycle was found near a forest trail leading to an old bridge. There were signs of a struggle on the ground, but no other clues. Detective Jacob Wright, a former New York City cop who had moved to Black River after a personal tragedy, took on the case. He knew the first 48 hours were critical. But the forest surrounding the town was vast, and time was merciless. Jacob began by interviewing the locals. Most of the residents were sympathetic, but no one had noticed anything suspicious. However, old Mrs. Gray, who lived on the outskirts of town, told him about a strange truck she had seen that evening. She couldn't make out the license plate, but she remembered a large scratch on the hood in the shape of a lightning bolt. Jacob headed to the forest where the bicycle had been found. He noticed that the ground near the bridge had been slightly dug up, as if someone had tried to hide something. Calling in a team for excavation, he found an old cell phone. The screen was cracked, but the device still worked. The last call had been made to a number belonging to a local mechanic, Tom Harrison. Jacob headed to the forest where the bicycle had been found. He noticed that the ground near the bridge had been slightly dug up, as if someone had tried to hide something. Calling in a team for excavation, he found an old cell phone. The screen was cracked, but the device still worked. The last call had been made to a number belonging to a local mechanic, Tom Harrison. Tom denied any involvement, but Jacob noticed that his truck had a scratch in the shape of a lightning bolt. Tom claimed he had been at home with his wife, but his wife seemed nervous and couldn't confirm his alibi. Jacob began to suspect that Tom was hiding something. During a search of the Harrisons' house, Jacob found a basement locked with a padlock. Inside, he discovered a room covered in photographs of children. Among them was Emily. But what shocked him even more was a symbol drawn on one of the walls, a triangle with a circle inside. It was a sign he had seen before in a case he had investigated in New York. Back then, it had been linked to an underground cult that abducted children for rituals. Tom denied any connection to the symbol, claiming it was just graffiti. But Jacob knew it was a lie. He dug deeper and found that Tom was connected to a group of people who regularly gathered in the forest. Among them was the town's mayor, Richard Baker. Jacob realized the case was much deeper than he had thought. He decided to go into the forest alone to find the cult's meeting place. After hours of searching, he stumbled upon an old shack hidden among the trees. Inside, he found Emily. She was alive but terrified. Next to her lay the body of a man who, as it turned out, was her uncle. He had tried to save her but had been killed. Jacob carefully took Emily by the hand, trying to calm her down. She was trembling, her eyes wide with fear. He knew they had to get out of there as quickly as possible. The shack where she had been held was gloomy and cold, with old, battered walls that smelled of dampness and decay. Strange objects lay on the floor, candles, knives, and what looked like ritual clothing. Jacob couldn't believe that such horrifying things could happen in a place like this. They stepped out of the shack, but the forest around them was dense and dark. Jacob felt every step echo in the silence. Emily clung tightly to his hand, her breathing uneven. He tried to orient himself, but the forest seemed endless. Suddenly, figures emerged from the shadows. First one, then another, and another. There were at least 10 of them. They surrounded Jacob and Emily, and the glint of knives and other menacing objects flashed in their hands. Among them was Mayor Baker. His face, usually calm and confident, now bore an expression bordering on obsession. He stepped forward, his voice cold and resolute. "You shouldn't have come here, right?" he said. "This wasn't your business. We're doing this for the town. For its cleansing. Sometimes sacrifices are necessary." Jacob felt his heart sink. He knew they were trapped. His gun was with him, but against so many people, it was almost useless. Emily pressed closer to him, and he could feel her fear transferring to him. He braced himself for the worst, but then, voices echoed through the forest. At first, it was a whisper, then loud commands. Police officers emerged from the shadows, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. Jacob felt his body relax, but he couldn't allow himself to fully let his guard down. The police surrounded the cult members, and Mayor Baker, who had seemed all-powerful just moments ago, now looked confused and helpless. It turned out that Tom Harrison's wife, fearing for her safety, had secretly contacted the police. She told them what she knew, and they had arrived just in time. The cult members were arrested, and Emily was returned to her family. She was safe, but her eyes still reflected a terror that might never fully fade. Jacob Wright stayed in Black River. He knew his work here wasn't done. Even after the arrests, Mayor Baker and his followers remained a mystery. The symbols he had seen in the Harrisons' basement haunted him. He knew this wasn't the end. Something bigger, something much darker, was hiding in the shadows of the forest. Sometimes at night, he dreamed of those symbols. He would wake up in a cold sweat, feeling as though someone was watching him. Even in the quietest places, like Black River, the darkest secrets could lurk. And the shadow in the forest was always waiting, ready to return.